4 United States presidents have been assassinated, and 2 more have survived deadly assassination attempts. This is part 1 of our Presidential Assassination series, Abraham Lincoln and James A. Garfield.
Let's dig into this. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, near Hodgenville, Kentucky, to Thomas and Nancy Hanks Lincoln. There were 3 children, Sarah, Abraham, and Thomas, who died as a baby. The family was very poor and in 1816 moved to Indiana, where Thomas built a cabin. Abraham helped in all the work farming and building, but did not like hunting and fishing. His much-loved mother died in 1818, and his father hastily married Sarah Bush Johnston Lincoln, a widow from Kentucky with 3 children. Luckily for Abraham, Sarah was a wonderful mother and loved the Lincoln children as if they were her own. She would be devoted to Abe for the rest of his life. She encouraged him to read, and he would walk miles to borrow books.
When Abe was 21 years old, the family moved to Illinois. Abe helped his father establish a new farm before deciding to strike out on his own. He was the postmaster of New Salem for a while, and worked as a surveyor and tried to run a store. And he kept borrowing books and learning. After volunteering in the 1832 Black Hawk War and seeing no action, he ran for the Illinois legislature and won several terms in the state assembly before deciding the law was his calling. In 1836, this self-taught lawyer passed the bar.
In 1837, he moved to the new capital of Illinois, in Springfield. He had a law office with John Stuart at first, then with Stephen Logan. But his partnership with William H. Herndon would last many years, and their friendship would last the rest of Lincoln's life. Lincoln tried cases in Springfield and also rode the circuit, trying cases in many of the other counties of the state. As his reputation grew and he gained important clients, including railroads, manufacturing companies, and banks, he built a reputation as one of the best lawyers in the state.
He married Mary Todd in 1842. She was beautiful, smart, well-educated, and ambitious. Together, Abe and Mary had 4 sons. Robert Todd Lincoln, born in 1843, would outlive both his parents and have a political career of his own. Edward Eddie Lincoln was born in 1846 and died of consumption just before his 4th birthday in Springfield. William Willie Lincoln was born in 1850 and died in 1862 of typhoid fever in Washington, D.C. Thomas Tad Lincoln was born in 1853 and died in 1871 at the age of 18 in Chicago, possibly from tuberculosis.
Lincoln became an Illinois congressman in 1846, returning to Illinois and his law practice in 1849 after his term. Then, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, passed by Congress in 1854, put him on the path to infamy. The act gave states and territories the right to decide for themselves whether slavery would be legal. Lincoln and Stephen Douglas debated the validity of the act, with Lincoln very much against and Douglas in support. In 1856, Lincoln ran for the Senate and gave his famous speech saying he believed the United States could not survive half slave and half free. The speech and debates propelled him onto the national political stage.
In 1860, Lincoln was elected President of the United States. By the time he was inaugurated, 7 southern states had seceded and formed the Confederate States of America. Lincoln spent his entire presidency navigating the Civil War. In 1863, he dedicated a national cemetery at the site of the Battle of Gettysburg by giving a speech. It was only 272 words. The Gettysburg Address became the most famous of all his speeches.
Lincoln was re-elected in 1864 as the war seemed to finally be coming to an end. His second inaugural address, given on March 4th, 1865, outlined his belief the United States had to be reunited and whole again. A man named John Wilkes Booth was at the inauguration. He had already decided to do something to change the outcome of the war.
John Wilkes Booth was born May 10, 1838 in Maryland, the ninth of 10 children in the family of actor Julius Booth. John Wilkes and his brother Edwin would become actors like their father, with Edwin becoming the most famous actor of the time. John Wilkes Booth was an adamant supporter of the Confederacy and a volunteer in the Virginia militia.
By 1864, Booth had put together a group and a plan to kidnap President Lincoln. Their attempts failed, and Booth decided the plan would change from kidnapping to assassination. Not only the president, but of the cabinet members as well. The conspirators met in the boarding house of Mary Surratt and planned that Lewis Powell and David Herold would assassinate Secretary of State William Seward, while George Atzerodt would assassinate Vice President Johnson. On April 14, 1865, they put their plan into action. Seward survived being viciously attacked and stabbed by Powell. The attempt on Johnson's life never happened, because Atzerodt instead went to a saloon.
On April 14, 1865, President and Mrs. Lincoln went to Ford's Theater to see the play Our American Cousin with their guest Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée Clara Harris. John Wilkes Booth entered the presidential box just after 10 p.m. and shot President Lincoln point blank in the back of the head. Booth jumped from the box, yelled either Sic Semper Tyrannis, which is the state motto of Virginia and means thus always to tyrants, or the South is avenged. Eyewitness reports vary on this, and he may even have said both, and then he fled.
The president was taken across the street to a boarding house. The bullet had entered through or just behind Lincoln's left ear and lodged behind his right eye. Doctors could do nothing. At 7:22 a.m. on April 15, 1865, President Lincoln died.
Booth and co-conspirator David Herold were on the run for 12 days. They went to the home of Dr. Mudd to have the leg Booth broke, jumping from the presidential box, set, and then they went south. They were discovered hiding out in Richard Garrett's barn. David Herold surrendered. Booth would not. He was shot by Thomas Boston Corbett as the barn was set on fire. Booth died about 3 hours later on the front porch of the farmhouse.
Lincoln's body lay in state at the White House before making a 1,700-mile train trip to Springfield, Illinois. The train tracks were lined with mourners along the way, and crowds gathered at the 10 stops the train made. The coffin of Lincoln's son Willie was on the train as well, being moved to be buried with his father.
Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield, Illinois is the final resting place of the 16th President, Abraham Lincoln. He rests along with his wife Mary and 3 of their children, Eddie, Willie, and Tad. President James A. Garfield was born on November 19, 1831, in Cuyahoga County, Ohio. He married Lucretia Rudolph, and they had 7 children. 2 of their children died as infants. Elected to the Ohio legislature in 1859, he served 9 terms representing Ohio's 19th congressional district. He served in the Civil War, rising to the rank of Major General. And in 1880, the Ohio legislature elected him to the U.S. Senate.
Garfield did not intend to run for the presidency in 1880. At the Republican Presidential Convention, where Garfield was the chairman of the Ohio delegation, he gave a speech for candidate John Sherman, Secretary of the Treasury and a fellow Ohioan. The speech was so good it got Garfield nominated as the Republican candidate on the 36th ballot. He had been trying to stop all his nomination throughout all the ballots. His opponent in the presidential election was Democrat General Winfield Scott Hancock. Garfield won with 214 votes in the Electoral College to Hancock's 155. The popular vote was closer. Garfield won by fewer than 10,000 votes.
Garfield took office on March 4, 1881. 4 months later, on July 2nd, he went to the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C. to take a train and meet his family for a summer vacation. The upcoming trip made all the newspapers.
Charles Guiteau was looking for a job. He had tried and failed at many things in his life. He had been erratic for years, and his family had tried to have him committed as insane in 1875, but he had escaped. He had printed a pamphlet in support of Garfield's presidential nomination and handed it out to the public, and felt he had been instrumental in getting Garfield elected. As a reward for this, he expected to receive an appointment as a foreign minister. He visited the White House on many occasions and was eventually banned due to his increasing insistence on being rewarded for getting Garfield elected, and his destitute appearance. And then he had what was called divine inspiration. He went to the train station and waited for the president.
When President Garfield entered the train station, he had no Secret Service agents or bodyguards. The station was not cleared of other travelers either. None of the precautions we see today were used in those days. He was with 2 of his sons and Secretary of State James Blaine. Secretary of War Robert Todd Lincoln was waiting at the station to see the president off. And among the crowd was Charles Guiteau.
Guiteau pulled a revolver from his pocket and fired. The first bullet hit Garfield, grazing his shoulder. The second bullet hit square in the president's back, knocking him to the ground. Guiteau tried to run from the station, but instead ran into a policeman who arrested him. The president was carried back to the White House.
The bullet fired at Garfield's back had missed all major organs, but doctors couldn't find it despite probing with bare hands and non-sterilized equipment. Alexander Graham Bell invented an early metal detector, but he wasn't able to locate the bullet either. Infection set in, and the president spent weeks in deteriorating health with fever and pain, unable to keep food down, and suffering in the Washington, D.C. summer heat and humidity.
On September 6th, President Garfield was taken by train to what is now Long Branch, New Jersey, to escape the weather and be near clean sea air. His health continued to decline with angina, sepsis, pneumonia, and eventually ruptured aneurysm taking their toll. He died on Monday, September 19th, 1881, 79 days after he was shot. He was 49 years old.
Charles Guiteau went on trial in November, where he acted even more erratically than he had before. He was planning to run for the presidency himself when, on January 25, 1882, the jury found him guilty of murdering President James Garfield. He was hanged on June 30, 1882. He danced his way to the gallows, waving at spectators, reading poetry, and shaking hands with the executioner.
The James A. Garfield Memorial in Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland, Ohio, is the final resting place of the 20th President, James A. Garfield, and his wife Lucretia.
Thanks for watching episode 1 in our series on presidential assassinations. We hope you'll join us for episode 2 on President McKinley and John F. Kennedy.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And we'll see you on the next one.